There's a familiar feeling, an invisible weight that many of us carry every day. It's not the physical fatigue after a long day's work. It's deeper than that. It's a soul-deep exhaustion, an emptiness that creeps into the quietest moments, often in the middle of the night or in the silence of the early morning. It's the feeling you get when you realize your life has somehow become an endless series of performances. Performing the role of the dutiful child, the dedicated employee, the understanding partner, the ever-present parent. Each role requires a different mask, a different script, and with every change, a small piece of your true self seems to get left behind. Do you recognize this feeling? The sense of vague dread when your phone rings, not because you don't want to talk, but because you know the call will demand a piece of energy you no longer have. Or when you agree to a social event, not because you want to go, but because the fear of disappointing someone is greater than your desire for a peaceful night at home. You've become a master architect in building the lives of others, but you've neglected the blueprint for your own. This isn't a personal failure. It's a symptom of our times, a world that celebrates busyness as a badge of honor and treats putting yourself first as an act of selfishness. We are taught to give, to serve, to please. But no one teaches us what to do when the well inside runs dry. If these words strike a deep chord within you, then this video is no accident. It's an invitation. An invitation to stop, take a deep breath, and begin the most important journey of all, the journey back to yourself. Today, we're not just talking about philosophy. We're talking about taking your life back. The trap of external approval. To understand why we burn out for others, we need to examine one of the most fundamental beliefs society has installed in us, the belief that our self-worth is determined by external factors. This is the trap of external validation, a sophisticated illusion we have all chased. Imagine you are lost in a vast desert. You're exhausted, parched, and under the scorching sun, you desperately search for a sign of life. Suddenly, in the distance, you see something shimmering. A clear blue lake, surrounded by lush palm trees. An oasis. With your last ounce of strength, you run towards it, your heart pounding with hope. But when you arrive, when you fall to your knees and reach out to feel the cool water, your hand touches only hot sand. It was just a mirage. External validation works exactly the same way. It promises satisfaction, security, a sense of being seen. It might be a compliment from your boss, a skyrocketing number of likes on a post, the envy in someone's eyes when you talk about your achievements, or the approval from a family member you've always sought. In the moment you receive it, you feel a brief rush of pleasure, like the first sip of water after a long thirst. But the feeling never lasts. The mirage quickly fades, and you find yourself back in the desert, thirstier than before, and now even more desperate to find the next oasis. Why? Because we have built our mental home on unstable ground. Let's look closer at the psychology behind this need. As children, we learn that good behavior is rewarded and bad behavior is punished. Parental approval means safety and love. Disapproval means isolation and danger. This basic survival mechanism is deeply ingrained in our nervous system. The problem is, as we grow up, many of us never update this operating system. We continue to unconsciously seek approval from authority figures, bosses, friends, partners, even strangers online, as if our very survival depends on it. We hand them the keys to our emotional state. When they are pleased, we feel happy. When they are displeased, we feel anxious and insecure. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus, who was once a slave and endured the harshest of conditions, understood this better than anyone. He taught one of the most foundational lessons of Stoicism, the dichotomy of control. He said that some things are within our control, and some are not. Within our control are our own thoughts, judgments, and actions. Outside our control is almost everything else, our health, our wealth, our reputation, and most importantly, the opinions of others. He insisted that the source of all human suffering comes from confusing these two, trying to control what we cannot, and neglecting what we can. When you post a picture and then constantly check your phone to see how many people have liked it, you are placing your happiness in something completely outside your control. You are giving power to an algorithm and the fleeting moods of hundreds of other people. When you work tirelessly for a word of praise from your boss, you are betting your satisfaction on the subjective perception of another person, who might be having a bad day or simply not paying attention. You are becoming a slave to their approval, just as Epictetus was once a literal slave. But he found freedom not by changing his external circumstances, but by changing his internal mind. He realized that no one could harm his soul if he did not allow it. Today, this trap is more dangerous than ever with the advent of social media. These platforms are intentionally designed to exploit our basic human need for connection and recognition. They have created what is called an attention economy, where our value seems to be quantified by numbers, followers, likes, comments. We carefully construct a digital version of our lives, a highlight reel of our best moments, our greatest achievements, our happiest smiles. But it's only part of the story. We don't post the sleepless nights, the arguments, the moments of self-doubt, or the gnawing loneliness. And then we compare our real, messy lives to the curated highlight reels of others. It's a competition you can never win. You are comparing your behind the scenes to everyone else's main stage. The pressure doesn't just come from the digital world. It also comes from our loved ones. Perhaps your parents always wanted you to follow a certain career path, and every decision you make is measured against that expectation. Perhaps in your friend group, success is defined by the size of your house or the brand of your car. To deviate from these expectations can feel like a betrayal. So, we comply. We choose a major we don't love, work a job that drains us, buy things we don't need, all in exchange for a nod of approval. Each of these decisions is another brick in the wall of our own prison, a prison with invisible yet incredibly strong walls. So how do we break free? The first step isn't action. The first step is awareness. It's realizing you're in a trap. It's admitting you've given your power away. It's looking at the mirage and calling it what it is, a mirage. You must start by observing your own behavior. When you feel anxious, ask yourself, am I anxious because I did something wrong by my own standards, or because I'm afraid of what someone else will think? When you feel happy, ask yourself, does this joy come from within, from satisfaction with my own actions, or is it dependent on a compliment from the outside? This is a difficult and uncomfortable process. It requires brutal honesty with yourself. It means admitting that for years, you may have been living a life that wasn't entirely your own. But it is in this painful recognition that the seeds of true freedom begin to sprout. Because when you stop chasing mirages in the desert, you can finally start searching for the real source of water. And that source, as the Stoics taught us, has always been inside you. The protective power of self-compassion. If chasing external validation is the desert, then where is the real water? If we can't find our worth in the eyes of others, where do we find it? The answer, both incredibly simple and profound, lies in a concept that many of us often overlook or misunderstand: self-compassion. This isn't self-pity, it isn't self-indulgence, and it is certainly not a sign of weakness. It is a hidden power, a learnable skill, and the most reliable compass for navigating the ups and downs of life. First, it's crucial to clearly distinguish between self-compassion and a concept we are all more familiar with: self-esteem. Self-esteem is often conditional. It's based on comparison. You feel good about yourself when you succeed, when you're better than others, when you meet a certain standard. Self-esteem can be high when things are going well, but it's also incredibly fragile. A single criticism, a failure, or an unfavorable comparison on social media can shatter it in an instant, leaving you feeling worthless. Self-esteem asks, am I better than them? Self-compassion, on the other hand, is completely unconditional. It isn't based on evaluation or comparison. It doesn't ask if you are better than others. It simply recognizes that you are a human being, and therefore, you are worthy of kindness, especially from yourself. Self-compassion asks a completely different question: what do I need right now? Dr. Kristin Neff, one of the world's leading researchers on this topic, defines self-compassion as having three core components. Understanding these three is the key to unlocking its power. The first component is self-kindness, as opposed to self-judgment. Think about how you treat a close friend when they fail. Maybe they just got fired or went through a painful breakup. What would you say to them? Most likely, you'd say things like, "It's okay, everyone makes mistakes. You did your best. This doesn't define you. You're stronger than you think." You would comfort them, listen to them, and treat them with warmth and understanding. Now, think about how you treat yourself when you fail. What does the voice in your head say? For many people, that voice is incredibly cruel. It says, "You idiot. You should have known better. You messed everything up again. You'll never get anything right." Self-kindness is simply about turning the warmth and understanding you offer your friends inward, especially when you need it most. The second component is common humanity, as opposed to isolation. When we suffer or fail, our brains tend to make us believe we are the only person in the world going through this. We feel isolated, abnormal, and flawed. Why am I the only one struggling with this? Common humanity is the recognition that suffering and failure are an inescapable part of the human experience. It is not a sign that something is wrong with you, it's a sign that you are human. Everyone on this planet faces challenges, has insecurities, and makes mistakes. When you accept this truth, you no longer feel alone in your pain. Instead, you connect to the vast network of all humanity. You realize that your struggle isn't a wall separating you from others, but a bridge connecting you to them. The third component is mindfulness, as opposed to over-identification. Mindfulness is the ability to observe your painful thoughts and feelings in a balanced way, without ignoring them but also without letting them consume you. Many of us tend to fall into one of two extremes. We either try to suppress or ignore our feelings, pretending they don't exist. Or we get swept away by them, letting a single negative emotion take over our entire worldview. Mindfulness offers a middle path. It allows you to acknowledge your pain and say, "Oh, this is sadness. This is anxiety. It's here." You observe it with curiosity and non-judgment, rather than being carried away by it. In this way, you can maintain a healthy distance, realizing that you are not your emotions. You are the one experiencing the emotion. These aren't just nice philosophical ideas. These are psychological mechanisms that have been scientifically proven to have a profound impact on our mental health. As mentioned earlier, a large-scale meta-analysis published in the Journal of Business and Psychology reviewed the results of dozens of studies and found a stunningly consistent inverse correlation between self-compassion and mental health problems. Specifically, people with higher levels of self-compassion tend to have significantly lower levels of depression, anxiety, and stress. Why is the link so strong? A more recent study in the journal Frontiers in Psychology shed light on the mechanism. They found that self-compassion works by soothing the body's threat response system. When you self-criticize, your brain reacts as if you are under actual attack. It releases cortisol, the stress hormone, and activates the fight or flight response. But when you practice self-compassion, you activate the mammalian care system, releasing oxytocin, the bonding hormone, which creates a sense of safety and calm. Essentially, you are learning to be a loving parent to yourself on a biochemical level. As some of you have shared in the comments, this is a journey, not a switch you can flip. There will be days you do it well, and there will be days the old critical voice comes back. That is completely normal. The goal is not perfection. The goal is practice. So how do we practice this in a concrete way? Start with a simple exercise you can do right now. Think of something you're feeling bad about yourself for. Maybe it's a mistake you made at work, a bad habit you can't seem to break, or a physical feature you dislike. Now, take out a piece of paper and write a letter to yourself from the perspective of an unconditionally loving and wise friend. This friend knows all your imperfections but loves you anyway. This friend sees your struggle and understands your pain. What would they say to you about this issue? How would they remind you of your good qualities? How would they encourage you? Write it all down. This exercise might feel awkward at first, but it's a powerful way to start changing the pattern of your internal dialogue. Another exercise is to create a self-compassion break. When you notice you're feeling stressed or suffering, just pause for a moment. You can put a hand over your heart, or gently hug your arms, or any gesture that feels caring and soothing. Then, say 3 things to yourself. This is a moment of suffering. Mindfulness. Suffering is a part of life. Common humanity. May I be kind to myself in this moment. Self-kindness. It takes less than a minute, but it can completely shift your emotional state. For some, as one viewer astutely pointed out, this path can be strengthened by faith or spirituality. Whether you call it an inner power, the universe, or God, connecting to something larger than yourself can provide an infinite source of strength and acceptance. It reminds you that you are part of something much greater than your mistakes and insecurities. If this resonates with you, integrate it into your practice. Prayer or meditation can become profound acts of self-compassion. Learning to practice self-compassion is the ultimate act of rebellion in a world that constantly tells you you're not good enough. It's you declaring independence from the judgment of others and of yourself. It's you realizing you don't have to be perfect to be worthy of love. You just have to be human. When you begin to fill your inner well with the fresh water of kindness, you will find a miraculous change occurs. You will no longer approach your relationships with an empty bowl, begging others to fill it. Instead, you will come with a full cup, ready to share your abundance. And that is the foundation for authentic, healthy, and sustainable connections. The respectful, no, the art of setting boundaries. If self-compassion is building a peaceful garden within your soul, then setting boundaries is building a fence around it. This fence isn't there to isolate you from the world. It's there to protect what you are cultivating. It ensures your garden doesn't get trampled, that weeds from the outside don't invade, and that you have full authority over who gets invited in to enjoy its beauty. The act of saying no respectfully is one of the most powerful and loving expressions of self-compassion. It's when you say to yourself and the world, my peace is precious. My energy is finite. My time is my most valuable asset. And I will protect them. For many, especially those who tend to be people pleasers, the word no is one of the scariest in the dictionary. Just thinking about saying it can trigger a wave of anxiety and guilt. We're afraid of disappointing others. We're afraid of being seen as selfish, difficult, or unkind. The fear of rejection or conflict can be so strong that we'd rather sacrifice our own needs, take on extra burdens, and endure burnout than say that one small word. But here is the perspective shift we need to make: a deliberate no is not an act of aggression. It's an act of clarification. You're not rejecting a person, you're saying yes to your own mental health and well-being. Think about it: when something is infinitely available and has no cost, how do people treat it? They waste it. They take it for granted. But when something is scarce and precious, like a diamond, people cherish it. They protect it. They treat it with respect. Your time and energy are like those diamonds. They are finite resources. When you give them away indiscriminately to anyone who asks, you are teaching the world that they are not valuable. Conversely, when you start being intentional about who and how you share them, you start teaching others how to treat you. You are revaluing your own assets. As psychotherapist Judith Belmont pointed out, setting boundaries means knowing we are worthy of respect. It also means we can take care of our own needs first. This isn't selfishness. It's a prerequisite for emotional sustainability. You cannot pour from an empty cup. Constantly giving without ever refilling leads to an inevitable outcome: resentment and burnout. So what does setting boundaries look like in practice? It's not just about saying no. It's a subtle art that requires self-awareness and communication skills. Let's explore some of the most important types of boundaries and how to enforce them. 1. Emotional boundaries. This is perhaps the most subtle yet crucial type of boundary. An emotional boundary is recognizing where your feelings end and someone else's begin. People who lack emotional boundaries often act like sponges. If their partner has a bad day, they feel bad too. If a friend constantly complains about their problems, they carry the weight of those problems as if they were their own. They feel responsible for fixing other people's emotions. Setting an emotional boundary means you can be there for someone who is suffering without being consumed by their pain. You can empathize without absorbing. It means you understand that you are not responsible for anyone else's happiness but your own. Scenario: a friend constantly calls you to vent about their negative work and life situations. After every call, you feel drained and depressed. Sample script: instead of abruptly cutting them off, try saying gently but firmly, "I value our friendship and I'm always here to listen. But I've noticed our recent conversations have been very heavy, and it's starting to affect me. Can I listen for another 15 minutes, and then maybe we can talk about something more cheerful? Or perhaps we could brainstorm a solution together instead of just focusing on the problem." This validates their feelings but also protects your emotional space. 2. Time boundaries. The Stoic philosopher Seneca wrote extensively about the preciousness of time. He said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." We often waste our time not on laziness, but on obligations we feel forced to fulfill. Time is our only non-renewable resource. Once it's gone forever. A time boundary is about consciously protecting blocks of your time for your true priorities: deep work, rest, family, hobbies. This means learning to decline inappropriate requests, unnecessary meetings, and social events you don't truly want to attend. Scenario: your boss frequently gives you last-minute tasks at the end of the day on Friday, which cuts into your weekend. Sample script: instead of silently accepting and feeling resentful, try saying, "I understand this is important. I'm currently focused on finishing task X before the end of the day. Can I start on this first thing Monday morning? That way I can give it the full attention it deserves." This shows dedication but also professionally protects your personal time. 3. Mental and intellectual boundaries. This relates to protecting your thoughts, values, and beliefs. In a hyper-connected world, we are constantly bombarded with the opinions of others. Having a mental boundary means understanding that you don't have to engage in every debate. You have the right to hold your opinion without needing to fiercely defend it. It also means limiting exposure to content or conversations that cause you unnecessary stress or anxiety, such as toxic political arguments on social media or a relative who constantly criticizes your life choices. Scenario: at a family gathering, a relative starts a debate on a sensitive topic and tries to pull you in. Sample script: instead of jumping into the fight, you can smile and say calmly, "I can see this is a topic you're very passionate about. However, I'd rather just enjoy the family time today. Can we talk about something else? Or even more simply, I'd prefer not to discuss this right now." You don't need to explain further. How to overcome the guilt. When you first start setting boundaries, guilt is almost unavoidable. It's a conditioned response. For years, your nervous system has learned that pleasing others equals safety. When you do the opposite, your brain sounds an alarm: danger. You're breaking the rules. You'll be abandoned. It's crucial to recognize this guilt for what it is: a sign that you are growing. It's the echo of an old version of yourself being challenged. Take a deep breath and remind yourself why you're doing this. Remember the feeling of burnout and resentment. Remember that you are doing this out of self-respect and to be able to show up better and more authentically in your relationships. An important truth to remember: people who genuinely care about you and respect you will adapt to your new boundaries. They might be surprised at first, but ultimately they will respect them. The people who react with anger, manipulation, or by making you feel even more guilty, they are the very people you need boundaries with the most. Their reaction shows that they are not interested in you as a person, but in what you can provide for them. Losing these relationships can be painful, but it is necessary surgery to remove what is toxic from your life. Failing to set boundaries is far more dangerous. It is a sure path to bitterness. Every time you say yes when you really mean no, a small bit of resentment forms. Over time, those small bits accumulate into a mountain, poisoning your relationships and eroding your self-worth. Eventually, you might explode, destroying the very relationships you tried so hard to maintain. So, start small. Pick one area of your life where you feel most encroached upon and set one small boundary. Maybe it's not answering work emails after 7 p.m. Maybe it's saying no to one social invitation on the weekend. Notice how it feels. Acknowledge the discomfort and the guilt, but hold firm. Every time you successfully enforce a boundary, you are sending a powerful message to your subconscious: I matter. My needs matter. Gradually, it will get easier. It will become second nature. And you will realize that setting boundaries isn't about building walls to keep people out. It's about building a gate with a gatekeeper, and you are the gatekeeper. You get to decide who comes in, when, and for how long. That is autonomy. That is freedom. The ultimate act of courage, knowing when to walk away. We've talked about cultivating an inner garden and erecting a protective fence. But what happens when, despite all your efforts, a tree within the garden itself becomes diseased? It begins to wither, its roots poisoning the surrounding soil, and its shadow blocking the sunlight from other healthy plants. You've watered it, fertilized it, and pruned its small branches, but the sickness remains. The wise gardener knows that sometimes, the most loving act is not to try to save the dying tree, but to remove it, in order to protect the life of the entire garden. This is one of the hardest but most necessary lessons in life, knowing when it's time to walk away. The act of leaving is not a failure. It is not an admission that you didn't try hard enough. Quite the opposite. It is an ultimate act of courage. It is the culmination of everything we have discussed. It is you recognizing your intrinsic worth so deeply that you refuse to allow anything or anyone to diminish it. It is you practicing self-compassion at the highest level, choosing your long-term health over temporary comfort. And it is you enforcing the final, non-negotiable boundary, the boundary between a life that is thriving and one that is being stifled. When we hear the phrase, walk away, our minds often immediately jump to ending a romantic relationship. And certainly, that is one of the most significant applications of this principle. But the concept is much broader and deeper. Walking away can take many forms, and each requires its own kind of courage. Consider walking away from a job. Perhaps you have a high-paying job, an impressive title, and the admiration of friends and family. But beneath the surface, the job is slowly killing your soul. It requires you to violate your values. The environment is rife with toxicity, gossip, and unhealthy competition. Every Sunday evening, a sense of dread creeps into your stomach. You tell yourself you need the money, that you should be grateful. But self-compassion whispers a different question: what is the price of your soul? Leaving a job like that, one that provides financial security but causes spiritual bankruptcy, is an act of extraordinary bravery. It's you betting on yourself, trusting that by leaving a toxic environment, you will create space for an opportunity that is more aligned with who you truly are. Then there is walking away from a friendship. This is a grief rarely acknowledged by society, but it can be as profound as a romantic breakup. There are friendships that once nourished us, that were safe havens, but over time, they have changed. Perhaps it has become a one-way street, where you are always the giver and the other is always the taker. Perhaps the friend has become bitter and negative, and every encounter leaves you feeling more drained than uplifted. Or perhaps, you have simply grown in different directions, and the bond that once existed is no longer there. It's easy to hold on because of history, because of shared memories. But loyalty to your past should not be greater than loyalty to your present well-being. Walking away from such a friendship requires facing sadness and loss, but it is also an act of respect for both you and the other person, acknowledging that holding on to something that has died only prolongs the pain for both. Perhaps the most difficult form of walking away is leaving a toxic family dynamic. Family is our first relationship, and the patterns established there can be incredibly persistent. walking away here doesn't necessarily mean cutting off all contact. Sometimes, it means walking away emotionally. It means refusing to participate in the same old arguments that have been replaying for decades. It means no longer seeking approval from a parent who is incapable of giving it. It means setting a firm boundary that says, I love you, but I will not participate in this behavior anymore. I will not let myself be drawn into this negativity. You can still be present, but you are no longer an active participant in the toxic drama. You have stepped off the stage emotionally, and in doing so, you reclaim your autonomy. And finally, there is perhaps the most profound and transformative form of walking away from an old version of yourself. This is the internal struggle to let go of beliefs, habits, and identities that no longer serve you. It's leaving behind the people-pleaser, who learned their worth lies in self-sacrifice. It's leaving behind the perfectionist who lives in constant fear of making a mistake. It's leaving behind the inner critic who constantly tells you you're not good enough. This breakup is the most painful, because these identities have become a part of us. We don't know who we are without them. But to grow, we must be willing to shed our old skin. We must be willing to face the emptiness and uncertainty of becoming someone new. Stoic philosophy gives us a powerful framework for understanding this need to let go. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius, in his personal meditations, constantly reminded himself of the impermanent nature of all things. He wrote of life as a river, where everything is constantly flowing and changing. Trying to hold on to a moment, a relationship, or a circumstance is like trying to hold water in your hands. The tighter you squeeze, the faster you lose it. Wisdom, according to him, lies in learning to flow with the current, accepting that everything has its season, a time to come and a time to go. Walking away, from this perspective, is not a tragic event, but a harmonious participation in the natural rhythm of life. Of course, knowing you should walk away and actually doing it are two very different things. Fear can be paralyzing. The fear of uncertainty. The fear of loneliness. The fear that you are making a terrible mistake. And underneath the fear is grief. Even when leaving a toxic situation, we grieve. We don't just grieve the reality of what was lost, we grieve the potential of what we had hoped it could be. We grieve the home we thought we would build, the friendship we thought would last forever, the future version of ourselves we once envisioned. It's vital to allow yourself to feel that grief. Don't try to bypass or suppress it. The pain is not a sign you made the wrong decision. It is the price of love and attachment. It is proof that you cared. Treat your grief with the self-compassion we've discussed. Be kind to yourself. Remind yourself of common humanity, that loss is a universal experience. And observe your feelings with mindfulness, allowing them to come and go without being swept away by them. And here is the most beautiful, most hopeful part of this process. When you have the courage to walk away, to remove the diseased tree, you don't just create a loss. You create a space. Some might call it a void, but I prefer to call it a sacred emptiness. At first, that space can feel frightening and empty. But it is not the emptiness of nothingness. It is the emptiness of potential. It is fertile ground that has been cleared of weeds, now ready to receive new seeds. It is space in your life for new people who will respect your boundaries and love your authentic self. It is space for a new opportunity that aligns with your values and passions. It is space for a new, more authentic version of yourself to be born and to thrive. Knowing when to walk away is the ultimate test of self-respect. It is the definitive declaration that you trust in your ability to create a better future more than you cling to a past that no longer serves you. It requires immense courage. But on the other side of that fear and grief is not emptiness. It is wholeness. It is peace. It is the freedom to finally become the person you were born to be. We have traveled a long way together in this past hour. We started in a desert, chasing the mirages of external approval, feeling exhausted and empty. Then we turned inward, discovering the protective power of self-compassion, learning to become our own best friend and ally. We learned how to build a sturdy fence around our inner peace with the art of setting respectful boundaries. And finally, we faced the most courageous act of all, recognizing that sometimes, growth requires us to have the courage to walk away. If there is one golden thread running through all these ideas, it is a shift in power. It is a quiet revolution where you reclaim the authority to define your own worth from the outside world and place it back where it has always belonged, inside you. It's about stopping the question, what do people think of me, and starting to ask, what do I think of myself when I go to bed at night? It's about realizing that freedom is not the absence of limits, but you being the one who sets them. Throughout his life, the emperor and philosopher Marcus Aurelius took the time to write to himself, to remind himself how to live a life of purpose and virtue. One of his most powerful and direct reminders, a sentence that has echoed through the centuries, is this: waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. This is the crux of our entire journey. You can watch 100 videos, read dozens of books, and intellectually agree with every concept we've discussed. But real change never happens in the mind. It happens in action. It happens in the small, daily choices. It happens in the "no" you finally say, even as your heart pounds. It happens in the moment you forgive yourself for a mistake, instead of berating yourself. It happens when you choose to walk away from a toxic conversation, instead of engaging in it. Your life is not shaped by your grand intentions, but by your concrete actions. So, this video is not an end point. It is a starting point. And if you have stayed with me this whole way, if these words have stirred something inside you, then your journey of action begins right now, with a public and intentional declaration. This is not just a comment for a video. This is a contract with yourself. This is your first act of being one. Go to the comment section below and write these 5 words: I am my own priority. Write them not for me, but for yourself. Write them as an affirmation, a commitment, a reminder of the decision you are making today. By doing so, you are also sending a signal to thousands of others just like you, creating an invisible community of individuals on the same path. And finally, if you have found this journey valuable, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Because this is not a one-time fix, this is a lifelong practice. We will continue to explore these paths together. Thank you for your time, your attention, and your courage. The path forward is yours to create. Walk it with integrity and self-respect.